Good morning, Warriors. Back with another episode of Vigor Warriors 2 and the 1% Club. Let me move my camera a little bit over here. Hope you guys are doing well. Had a nice weekend. I did one over the weekend and trying to catch up on some more of the questions and things you had. But first, let me say thank you. As always, we're approaching 752 days today, I think. And keep moving from there. And monk mode's over 200, something like that. I haven't seen that, but we're moving along, and not without challenges, of course. But we need to continue to kind of keep in the fight and battle on, my friends, battling on. All right, so thank you for subscriptions, comments. Alvin, shout out, thank you, nice donation. I appreciate that as always. I always try to. I have a donation thing, PayPal, you can always send to. I haven't really done too much with that. Sometimes I forget a lot of times to put it on this thing. So if you are interested in donating, you don't see the actual link, let me know. I'll put it up. I do have it up on a bunch of my videos, but not all of them. I think I forget it a bunch of times, but I'll try to do it over the next few days and try to keep that on there so that you guys have that in case you wanted to donate. And I greatly appreciate any kind of help, especially during these type of times that we're all kind of suffering through, trying to get back into some normal pattern. All right, so Elliot Jones, I believe his last name is, had a great question. Thank you, Elliot, for a great question and some great comments. And so let me kind of dissect this a little bit and kind of talk about this in terms of our retention plan. So he was talking about whether or not that when people have intercourse, does all the energy transfer to this, in this case, the female was asking about, and how do females, retain, and what about the female side of all this, and what about females, also being on the journey, and of course, that does happen. I focus a lot on the male side only because we have a lot of males in the audience and a lot of the males ask me questions. But this is a good question from Elliot, and let's kind of delve into it a little bit and talk about this type of situation. So the first part of the question is talking about the fact that about releasing energy. And yes, so if you're not releasing energy when it comes to magazines, books, things like that, that is the worst case. That's the worst thing you can do, in my mind. And I had problems with this for 40 some years. But I think when it comes to actually having intercourse, one of the things I've always said is that I believe the one exception to a lot of this is procreation. Obviously, I think God wanted us to have children, and that's the purpose of the job. That's why a lot of times men, that's why they get excited, because their body's telling them it's time to procreate. And when it does not happen, well, then obviously you're wasting a lot of energy. Now, when it comes to intercourse, obviously, and unless you're not going to release, you're basically going ahead and transferring that energy to the other person. Now, it's only obviously the energy that you're releasing in my mind. Now, once again, I'm not an expert on this, but in my mind, you're releasing that energy into the person. And that person then is accepting your energy. And I think that's your gift to that person to make them a stronger person. Now, energy is always energy. So it doesn't matter where it's coming from. But if you're giving some energy to somebody else, that's benefiting somebody. This is why we talk about this. We don't talk about this in terms of energy most of the time. We just talk about this in terms of males and females and physicality and all this other kind of stuff. But we don't talk about the energy level. And people don't really recognize that. But that's one of the reasons why people feel, while males tend to be very tired, while females are very excited, and they're all of a sudden amped up. And I think that happens a lot because of the energy transfer. Now, from what I have read and taught and looked at, To answer the second part of the question that Elliot's posing is that I think that everybody has certain levels of testosterone. Now, women don't have as much of it as men. They have estrogen, but they can build up. And the trouble that I've read is that during their cycle, during the month, they lose a lot. They lose their energy, but they can build it up until that happens. And I think that's an important type of thing too. Now, added to that becomes the idea of procreation and things like that. Obviously, they have a lot of energy to be able to do that. So I believe when you look at these type of things, you can see that energy is going back and forth. Obviously, we transfer energy a lot of ways. Emotionally, we do the same thing. You know, if someone is venting to you, they're letting the energy go, and they feel better because now they feel more rejuvenated, because though they let the energy go, it was negative energy. You're now getting that energy, and you may feel at first you're probably overwhelmed, but you could feel stronger in the long run. Even though you feel drained at the time, you now feel like you're okay. But you've also given energy back by listening, and so it's an exchange of energy. So a lot of times, you know, we're exchanging energy, and that's part of the issue that we're talking about. But I think when you look at this idea, you have to realize that the male who is or a female who is a person on retention is a superhuman person, because they're not losing any of their energy. And though women and men may get the energy in different ways, and they may lose their energy in different ways, they're both really strong when they're able to retain. And if they're not losing their energy all the time, except for procreation, then you're going to have a lot of supermen and superwomen out there. And so, Elliot, I think that there is a transfer of energy, to answer your first question. And I do think that women can benefit a great deal by retention, as men can. It just says they work in a different way. Their bodies, from what I read and understood, work in a different way. And they do need to have that retention plan as well. So I think when we look at this idea, and it's a really good question, because I think as we look at relationships with people, it is always interesting for me to always know that, well, when you have intercourse with people, especially when males have it with females, the females tend to be very, very happy. And you can sense that because of the way they react afterwards. And a lot of times it's because of the energy. Now, I never thought about that years and years ago, but the idea is that they're gaining energy through this type of way. And if you look at it from this perspective, it makes a lot of sense. You're transferring something, you're giving something as almost a present. Now, we don't look at it this way, except for the 1% Club. We look at it this way, but a lot of people don't look at it this way. I mean, they don't really see that. But that's why it's a present, and your gift is the child, right? In this world we live in, that's not the perception most people have, but that's really kind of, in my mind, the reality of the situation. And when you look at these type of things, you realize that you're transferring energy. Now, you're transferring energy to have a child, but you're also transferring energy. And if you don't have a child for some reason, if you decide not to, or the baby it doesn't happen to produce a child, those type of things, well, then you're talking about giving that person a level of energy from you. And that person can do that as well. So the female who also releases energy, and they release energy just in a different way than men, they also are giving you a present when it comes to releasing energy. And so this whole thing becomes a union between the two people. Now, we don't tend, we kind of take all this very lightly now, because people are, building up body counts and all this other kind of stuff going on. So it doesn't mean as much to people, in my opinion, than it should. But I think once again, if you realize the energy part of this, you realize that both people are giving presents and giving gifts to people, each other, as they are, doing all this. But I think that both males and females can be superhuman if they go ahead and get this power of retention and they use it and they transmute it to become stronger and stronger. And the trouble, once again, is temptation, whether it's on of the males or females. I mean, it's a temptation type of thing. And it doesn't really matter, what gender you're at. You're going to be affected by this temptation and this energy loss that you have. And so you have to really kind of think about this a little bit, ramifications, saying, okay, what is going to happen if I lose this energy? Is it going to something that's really going to be something that's worthwhile? Is it something that's going to be productive? Or is it something that's just, going to be just out there and I've lost energy and there's nothing to be gained except for a few seconds of interaction and pleasure? And you realize this because after those few seconds are over, and I know I experienced this so many times, that the idea that is you're looking at is basically saying, go ahead and do this, but I have no, you have no satisfaction. After a few minutes of this, all of a sudden now you feel really guilty, or at least I did. You feel guilty, and it's almost like you've lost something, and now I think your body recognizes that you've lost some energy. And I think the traction level you get, the aura you get, is really foundationally based on the fact that you're looking at all this energy you're building up, and then all of a sudden you lose the energy, and you feel, very bad about yourself, and you feel like that you're not really the same as you were, and you're not. You've lost some energy, and it takes some time to replace that. Now, as you get older and you do this enough, all of a sudden now it takes even harder and harder to replace that energy, especially if you're, like some people I know, doing this 4 or 5 times a day, and all of a sudden now you're in kind of a real bad habit, and this becomes part of your life, and you're destroying yourself. And this is why you have to see people who have dysfunctional types of behaviors from a sexual standpoint when they're younger. Because what's happening is that they're draining themselves dry. And they have really very little to focus on. And after a while doing that, well, in the old days it used to be the myth that you would go blind. Well, I don't know about being blind, but I do think that you end up being less of the person you can become because all of a sudden you lose that energy and there's nothing else there. So I think, Elliot, it's a great question. Once again, a shout out to you. I appreciate you take the time and effort to write and to ask some questions. That's my opinion. I'm not an expert, of course, on any of that kind of stuff. I can just tell you what I've seen over the years. And I do think that when you look at intercourse, you can see why most of the time the man who actually releases is, falling asleep. Well, a lot of times the female, the female is ready to go. They're excited because they're getting energy. Now, they may not describe it that way, but in my book, that's what's really happening. Okay? And then on the opposite side of it, obviously males and females can become superhuman if they don't do this. And they only pick spots to procreate or do that, and they don't focus on this the whole time. They can achieve a lot more. And you see a lot of males and females, men and women, succeeding in the world of business and places like that because they're using their energy to transmute their energy into a lot of good things to help people. And that's when you can really use it for good, and you're not just focusing on chasing other males or other females around. So, all right, my friends, well, this is the one for today. Thank you for Elliot for your comments, and this is the end of the show. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of the day. It looks like a beautiful day here in the Midwest. And until next time, guys, God bless you guys, and battle on.